Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Mess. So, Derek, got a fun and exciting video for you guys today because we have more details in on the Neo Geo AES Plus. That is because a French channel with the English translation being titled Retro Gamers Gathered actually interviewed for a tech and talked about more of the specs and overall philosophy in the design of Plaion's Neo Geo AES Plus. And the Plaion Replay is definitely a very exciting product that a lot of people, myself obviously included, are stoked about, and we're going to find out this fall exactly how well they did. But getting new information is definitely important, and honestly on this one we got some confirmation of some of the biggest questions out there, including stuff like different BIOSes, whether or not new games are going to come to the platforms, and a lot more information. That's what we're going to be talking about today. And honestly, I am as excited about this as I was when I first made the video, because if you know me and you know the channel, you know I'm a huge Neo Geo fan. I have an AES, an MVS, a Neo Geo CDZ, Neo Geo Pocket Color, and of course pretty much every FPGA console that can run a Neo Geo core. But having a new design console in 2026 with the potential of not only giving you clean HDMI out, but as well as that analog video with reprinted games, the potential for even new games for the Neo Geo, that is just 69 out of 10 amazing in my opinion. Before getting much further involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. But first off, let's talk about the Metal Slug franchise and slowdown on the Neo Geo AES. Slowdown was just a thing we dealt with on Metal Slug. Now on some games, in shmups particularly, slowdown was actually programmed in sometimes to allow you for a better and more accurate screen read to give you time to actually see the bullets. But in a game like Metal Slug, slowdown definitely wasn't something that the developers wanted in there, and sometimes it came down to a math error, sometimes it came down to just trying to push too much on screen at once. And there are cores out there on the FPGA side of things that allow for upclocking of the actual CPU speed. And Furtech on the Retro Gamers Together kind of podcast talked about this, and there is going to be overclocking features. And just so you know, I'm only using small snippets from this video. I want you guys to go over to the channel, give them a like and subscribe, and you can get it auto-translated into French if you don't actually speak French. But knowing that the AES Plus is going to be dealing with overclocking in some way, shape, or form, and Furtech is figuring it out himself, that is going to be a very impressive thing, because you can get better performance out of Metal Slug 2, and X when you actually have that overclocking enabled. It is not a perfect fix, at least on the FPGA and software emulation side of things, but of course we don't know exactly what Furtech's doing, but I'm sure it will be the best possible because they definitely know exactly their way around a Neo Geo design, and that's because they did a lot of the reverse engineering of the silicon on the Neo Geo in and of itself, decapping chips and getting scans and even dealing with the schematics of how those chips were built. So that is very promising indeed, because Metal Slug slowing down just isn't a fun time. Sure, in a shmup it can be beneficial, but in a running gun game a lot of times that slowdown, when it just randomly occurs in certain sections, can absolutely throw your overall gameplay experience off, and that's not something that's going to be fun. And even though it would be accurate, and of course you're going to be able to play these things at stock speeds for that accuracy, having those options built in are going to be very good. But do be aware that not every single Neo Geo game that does have slowdown will allow for overclocking, at least on copies that we have on AES and MVS and software emulation and even FPGA cores. It can break the logic. I have absolutely no idea if Plaion's doing anything in the background to try to change the game code to fix that. My assumption would be they are not, but it's going to be a nice feature, and it is confirmed coming over to the AES Plus, so overclocking definitely a 10 out of 10. Now additionally, something that's going to excite a lot of people is the Plaion team in this video talked about the fact that they are not quote-unquote abandoning this console when it's released, and they have plans for new games. Whether or not those new games are going to be old games republished or actual new games for the platform yet remains to be seen, but they did talk about quote-unquote new games that weren't on the platform before, and even though they're just saying they're working on it, and that's not a confirmation that anything new is actually going to be coming out, I really feel like Plaion probably sold way more pre-orders than they ever expected, because they did state that the overall response was overwhelming and not what they expected. So that is something that they are discussing, the fact that it's not going to be abandoned, it's not just going to be a 10-game console, and they are working on new things. And even if it only ever was 10 games, I think everyone would be stoked for those 10, but it's one of those things I want to see every single game they can possibly get the rights to republished on the AES Plus, because that's just going to be such a fun future potentially. Because if you think about it this way, you can use flashcards, we know that's been confirmed, but putting a Neo Geo card in a Neo Geo Geo AES is just a fun time, and for some of the games, especially the ones I show on the channel, they're absolutely a couple mortgage payments worth of cost. And it remains to be seen, obviously we don't have these things in our hand yet, but having some nice big snap-lock cases with full color manuals with the games inside of them and being backwards compatible with the original Neo Geo AES is just going to be an amazing time. But let's talk about the analog output of the actual console, because you know that's going to be RGB, but they discussed this as well, and Furtek talked about the fact that it's going to be using a mini DIN connector, and it's going to allow for stereo. That is because the original connector on a Neo Geo AES on the output does not have stereo, it's only mono. And it's one of those things, Neo Geo supports stereo, and you could get stereo from the headphone jack in the front, but we know you're going to be able to get stereo out of the back compared to an actual AES console unless you have it modified. It's also going to be our one and only soundtrack sample, so you can hear some stereo Neo Geo AES music to get an idea of what it'll sound like in analog, and I'll be right back with a lot more details. So yeah, stereo output when you're playing on a PVM or a CRT television is going to absolutely be a big thing. And I mean, we've gotten a lot of details from Plaion. It really does make me happy that the development of this is actually being shared with consumers in interviews with details from the developers. It's not one of those things. We didn't just get a few renders and then they decided to hold off all the information while they shipped this thing. There's prototypes out there, probably empty shells at this point in time. There's game cases. We have so many confirmations about flashcards working, about AES to MVS adapters working, the fact that the analog output in the back is going to carry stereo. Everything such as that is really promising. Now another question is whether or not this is going to support the UniBIOS, and apparently Furtek is making a new BIOS for the Neo Geo that's going to allow for setting changes, region changes, and everything else like that, but this is not the UniBIOS by Rizula. And it's one of those things, maybe they just wanted to make it in-house, but you have to remember that the actual UniBIOS changes, or BIOS changes in general, can be very important to Neo Geo games. It's not just to have them in English versus something like Japanese, but some games actually have censorship in the West, because if you don't have the right combination of dip switch settings or BIOS settings, you're not going to have a Mai with Moon Physics on those two watermelons she's been smuggling into fights since 1994. All jokes aside, it is a thing, it does need to be dealt with. On a less bouncy example, Mantra Melee, my favorite Neo Geo game of all time, if you play the Japanese version or you play the Japanese region within a UniBIOS or a BIOS setting change, you get the actual soundtrack for the game with all the absurdity. If you're playing this in the US region, you're getting a completely different soundtrack, and it absolutely pales in comparison to what you would get if you had the Japanese soundtrack playing. So it seems like Furtek has plans to be able to make sure you're able to combine whatever settings you want so that you can actually sit down and enjoy the version of the game that you want, whether that's Japanese music or no censorship in games like King of Fighters or Samurai Showdown with some of the fatalities. Are there going to be cheats in the Neo Geo AES Plus? I have no idea. It is not mentioned, but honestly we'll just have to kind of wait and see, because I don't think every single question is going to be answered when we know about it. And again, having some of these games, I love collecting the Japanese region because mostly it is just cheap, but then when I put it into my US AES, I need the UniBIOS to be able to change the region around if I so want to. And again, the idea that there's going to be more games coming, that is just going to be such an exciting thing, because most of the games on the screen here you do not want to actually pay for. Big Tournament Golf being the one that you definitely don't want to set any foot near when it comes to actually the purchase price of it. So the fact that we're getting the Neo Geo AES back in 2026 again, as I said in previous videos, is just something that was straight up not on my bingo card. And I can't wait to see what they're planning for new games, because the easiest options are going to be games that SNK completely owns the rights for, and they don't have to go out and get rights from other people. That would be stuff like all of the Samurai Showdown games, all the King of Fighter games, Art of Fighting, stuff like Real Bout, Fatal Fury, and of course The Last Blade and The Last Blade 2. I have an AES copy of The Last Blade, but I never bought 2, and now the price has gone to the point in time where even I don't want to spend the money on it. So this is definitely one. Both of these games I'd love to see reprinted, and the second one I'd love to purchase to put on my shelf. But you leave me a comment down below and you tell me, are there any pending questions on the Neo Geo AES Plus release that you haven't heard answers to yet? Because I'd love to write them down, and when I hear something I think to myself, would that be a video, and I decide from there. but everything is looking super promising when it comes to Plaion Replay in the Neo Geo AES Plus. You have Furtek as well as Hotego involved. You have people that understand the hardware intrinsically, probably more so than anyone that works at SNK at this point in time, because I'm sure all the engineers that made the AES have retired since then. You have new games coming, you have teased new games, including things that maybe never actually ran on the Neo Geo back in the day, and you have all the electrical engineering being thought about for all of the signals. So honestly, there's no warning flags here whatsoever, and it's full speed ahead, and I can't wait to test this thing. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.